Hello everyone, welcome to 90-Day News Hub. Watch the full video for the latest shocking updates. The internet exploded when whispers turned into proof. Sumit and Jenny, once celebrated as the sweet cross-cultural couple who defied every obstacle, are now accused of something darker than infidelity or family drama. Their brand built on heritage and love is being called a fraud. Fans are stunned. Sponsors are quiet, and insiders claim the network itself is considering pulling the plug. The image of the humble pair cooking together, smiling, over spice jars, and sharing family traditions, now looks like a staged illusion. What if the recipes, the legacy, even the story of generational wisdom was all borrowed from someone else? Welcome to Drama Live. I'm Sabrina Ann. If you've been following 90 Day Fiancé, you know how fast fairy tales turn into courtroom nightmares. Subscribe and tell me what you think, because this story is shaking every corner of the fandom. For years, viewers believed they'd found redemption in this couple's kitchen. The storyline was simple. Love conquers cultural barriers. The American wife learns Indian traditions. The son finally gains family acceptance. It sold peace after years of chaos. But behind the filters and festival reels, there's a growing accusation that the Spice of Sing brand wasn't born from love at all. It might be built on stolen history. Allegedly, an elderly widow has stepped forward claiming her late husband's recipes, his life's work, were taken, rebranded, and monetized under Sumit's family name. She says the secret techniques, the ratios, the stories about royal biryani aren't family heirlooms, but copies of her husband's private notes. The shock isn't only that the theft happened. It's that it was hidden in plain sight, turned into profit, and celebrated on television as culture and authenticity. Fans are furious, not only because of the alleged crime, but because they feel tricked emotionally. People believed this love story. They invested in the transformation narrative, the mother-in-law bonding with her American daughter-in-law, the journey of acceptance through food. Now the same scenes look rehearsed. The smiles seem forced. Every bowl of curry feels like evidence. If these allegations hold weight, faces a PR nightmare. Reality TV thrives on conflict, but fraud crosses a legal line. The question now is simple yet explosive. How deep does this lie go? And who inside the Singh family knew the truth? Stay with me, because what comes next might end their story forever. Started as a love story. Two people from different worlds fighting for acceptance, proving that love could survive judgment, age, and culture. Fans rooted for them because they weren't perfect. They were messy, emotional, and real. But as soon as the tears dried and the wedding vows were done, the storyline shifted. Suddenly, the same couple who once argued about in-laws and visas became entrepreneurs of Indian authenticity. The rebrand was genius on paper. From 90 Day Fiancé's emotional drama to the launch of Spice of Sing, they sold a new version of themselves. Instead of defending their love, they were now teaching it through recipes, online classes, and merch. Jenny became the face of curiosity, the foreigner learning sacred traditions. Sumit played the patient teacher, guiding her into his mother's world. And Sadhna, the matriarch once portrayed as the villain, was repackaged as a culinary queen whose family recipes had been passed down for generations. Their YouTube tutorials, TikTok snippets, and Instagram reels painted a fairy tale. Polished kitchens, laughing close-ups, perfectly plated curries. Each video ended with the same message. This was love made edible. For $20 a month, fans could join cooking sessions and taste the true heritage of the Singh family. It felt wholesome, familiar, comforting. And that's why it worked. People love redemption arcs. Gave them one. But small cracks were visible early on. Longtime viewers noticed something strange. Sadhna, who used to cook simple home dishes on the show, suddenly displayed advanced techniques even professional chefs found unusual. The spices changed, the plating changed, the stories changed. One day, A recipe that was a family secret from Delhi appeared nearly identical to one in a decades-old cookbook circulating in culinary forums. Fans dismissed it as coincidence, but food bloggers didn't. They began asking quiet questions. Then came the marketing push, brand partnerships, interviews, sponsorships. The couple went from financial struggle to posting photos in designer outfits, talking about expanding into international spice blends. It all happened too fast, too polished, too convenient. People started wondering if this transformation was genuine or curated. Was this still the same couple who once lived paycheck to paycheck, or had fame rewritten their story? Because if the Spice of Sing dream was built on borrowed recipes, then the entire redemption narrative might have been a scripted illusion waiting to collapse. Some stories begin quietly with a woman sitting alone in a small apartment surrounded by old photographs and the smell of fading spices. Her name is Fatima Khan, 80 years old, widow of a man once known in his community as a culinary genius. While Sumit and Jenny filmed cheerful cooking tutorials in a polished kitchen, she lived 10 miles away in a crumbling building, holding on to a single treasure, her husband's handwritten recipe journals. Tariq famous, but among chefs in Delhi he was respected. His notebooks were full of experiments, flavor ratios, and poetic notes about food and weather. He never sold his work, never sought attention. His recipes were meant to stay in the family, a private legacy for his children. When he passed away, Fatima guarded those pages like her last connection to him. Every ink mark, every smudge was a memory until one day they were gone. Years later, while her granddaughter scrolled through YouTube to cheer her up, a video popped up. Sadness Singh preparing something called royal biryani. Fatima froze. The technique, the layering, even the order of spices matched her husband's notes word for word. The golden veil method, saffron milk, and caramelized onions added at a precise moment wasn't folklore. It was Tar's invention. Fatima's hands shook. She wasn't watching a coincidence. She was watching her husband's legacy being sold as someone else's heritage. What hit hardest wasn't the money, though the Singh family's brand was thriving. It was the betrayal, the idea that someone had taken her husband's soul work and turned it into influencer content. The widow who once fed her neighbors now watched her recipes behind a paywall. Meanwhile, Sumit and Jenny posted photos of luxury renovations and fancy tours celebrating their family success. The imbalance was impossible to ignore. Was this theft or tragic overlap? Could Sadhna have somehow recreated the same recipe by chance? Maybe. But the details were too specific, the ratios too exact. And when food historians compared screenshots of the Singh videos with the original journal photos shared by Fatima's family, the similarities were undeniable. The internet started whispering. The Singh empire wasn't built on tradition. It might have been built on someone else's grief. And the woman everyone thought was a matriarch of culture might soon be exposed as the architect of a stolen legacy. The mystery begins 12 years before the fame when Sadhna Singh and Fatima Khan were still neighbors in Delhi. They weren't close friends, but they shared tea and gossip after prayers. When Tar Khan died, Sadhna was one of the first to visit. She brought food, offered condolences, and spoke softly about honoring his memory. In that moment of grief, she asked if she could borrow the main recipe journal to cook a tribute meal for her family. Fatima trusted her. She handed over the worn leather book, thinking it would come back in a few days. It never did. Weeks turned into months. Fatima kept asking, and Sad kept deflecting. First, it was with excuses about a cousin, then about misplacing it, then silence. The friendship faded, replaced by unease. Without the journal, Fatima lost more than recipes. She lost her connection to her husband's life work. Eventually, she stopped asking what else could a widow do against a family that had money and social influence. Years later, when Sumit and Jenny launched Spice of Sing, something strange happened. The first few online classes were simple dishes Sadhna had cooked before. But within months, the recipes shifted. Suddenly, her biryani had the same layering as Tar's notes. Her spice mixes matched his formulas to the gram. Even the phrases she used, golden veil, royal base, rain, saffron trick, were Tar words written decades earlier in his diary. Food. It started as a love story the world wasn't ready for. An older American woman, a younger Indian man, two cultures colliding under the relentless spotlight of reality television. Jenny and Sumit weren't polished, they weren't perfect, and that's exactly why people believed them. They cried on camera, fought with family, begged for acceptance, and endured years of public judgment. Fans watched them suffer and survive. Viewers rooted for them not because they were flawless, but because they felt real. Love against all odds. Love against age gaps, visas, parents, traditions, and society itself. 4 years, their story symbolized endurance. But what happens when the love story ends and the business begins? Because once the wedding vows were spoken and the drama cooled, something changed. The chaos that once fueled their storyline was replaced with calm. Arguments were replaced with smiles. Tears were replaced with turmeric-stained hands and carefully plated curries. And just like that, the narrative shifted. Jenny and Sumit were no longer fighting for love. They were selling culture. The rebrand was subtle but powerful. No more screaming matches with in-laws. No more visa countdowns. Instead, there were spice jars, copper pots, festival music, and soft lighting. The message was clear. This wasn't just a couple anymore. This was heritage. This was authenticity. This was legacy. Their content leaned heavily into Indian tradition, especially food. Cooking became the language of healing. Recipes became symbols of acceptance. Sumit became the teacher, Jenny the eager student, and Sumit's mother, once portrayed as the ultimate antagonist, was suddenly transformed into a wise matriarch, a guardian of ancient family recipes passed down through generations. Viewers were told these dishes weren't just meals. They were history, sacred knowledge, a lineage you could taste. And fans ate it up, literally and emotionally. Online cooking classes, paid memberships, spice blends, exclusive content. The branding was flawless. This is real Indian food. This is how families cook. This is our heritage. It felt intimate, almost spiritual. Supporters believed they were witnessing something rare, redemption through tradition. But behind the cozy kitchens and smiling thumbnails, cracks were forming. Small at first. Easy to dismiss. Longtime viewers noticed inconsistencies. The recipes became more complex, more refined, almost professional. The techniques didn't match what audiences had seen before. The woman who once cooked simple home meals on TV was now demonstrating advanced methods that surprised even trained chefs. Measurements shifted. Stories changed. 1 week a dish was described as a casual family meal. The next, it was framed as a royal recipe tied to ancestral prestige. And then came the whispers. Quiet comments at first. Deleted threads. Anonymous messages. People asking the same uncomfortable question. Where did these recipes really come from? At first, fans defended them. Of course families evolve. Of course skills improve. But then a far more serious allegation emerged. One that reframed everything. An elderly widow reportedly stepped forward with a claim that sent shockwaves through the fandom. She alleged that her late husband, a dedicated cook who spent decades perfecting his recipes, had his life's work taken. Not inspired by. Not adapted. Taken. According to her, his private notebooks, handwritten instructions, secret ratios, personal notes, were copied, rebranded, and monetized under another family's name. She claimed the stories told on camera weren't inherited traditions at all, but borrowed narratives. That the so-called generational wisdom was never theirs to sell. If true, this wasn't just drama. This was theft. And worse, it was theft hidden behind the language of culture and love. The most disturbing part isn't just the accusation itself. It's how public the alleged deception was. These recipes weren't quietly stolen and sold in the shadows. They were showcased on television, celebrated online, applauded by fans who believed they were supporting authenticity. Every smiling cooking session, every paid class, every spice blend suddenly looked different. What once felt wholesome now felt rehearsed. What once felt intimate now felt manipulative. Fans weren't just angry about potential fraud. They felt emotionally tricked. They believed in this couple. They invested time, money, and trust. They supported the redemption arc. The bonding between mother-in-law and American daughter-in-law. The idea that food healed wounds and united families. Now, those same scenes are being rewatched with suspicion. The smiles feel forced. The laughter feels scripted. Every bowl of curry feels like evidence. If these allegations gain traction, the fallout could be massive. Reality TV thrives on conflict, but fraud crosses a legal line. Networks can spin arguments. They can survive scandals. But intellectual theft? That's different. That invites lawsuits, investigations, and brand collapse. And it raises a question that fans can't ignore. How deep does this go? Who knew the truth? Was this a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control? Or was it a calculated move to turn someone else's legacy into profit under the protection of a love story? Because if even part of this is true, then everything viewers were sold, from the romance to the recipes, was a performance. And performances eventually end. This story didn't begin as a scandal. It began as hope. That's why the betrayal cuts deeper. And as more eyes turn toward this couple, one thing becomes clear. This isn't just about food. It's about trust. And trust, once broken, can't be edited back together. As the allegations began circulating quietly, something else happened just as loudly. Silence. No immediate denial. No emotional clarification video. No heartfelt explanation to fans who had supported them for years. And in the world of social media, silence is never neutral. It's strategic, or it's fear. Viewers noticed comments being limited, questions ignored, and critical threads disappearing. Cooking content continued, but the tone shifted. Less storytelling, more polished edits, less eye contact with the camera, as if someone had advised them to stick to the script and avoid improvisation. That alone raised eyebrows. Because when authenticity is your brand, hesitation becomes suspicious. Then came the timing. Just weeks after the widow's claims began gaining traction in niche forums, collaborators quietly distanced themselves. No public announcements. Just missing tags. Old videos removed from playlists. Sponsored links quietly disappearing. Fans started connecting dots. If this was all fake, why not say so immediately? Why not produce the proof? Family recipes don't just exist in memory. They exist in elders, relatives, witnesses. But instead of transparency, there was a tightening of control. And that's when fans began revisiting old footage with fresh eyes. Scenes that once felt emotional now felt staged. The famous cooking sessions where Sumit's mother corrected Jenny gently, guiding her hands, explaining techniques, those moments now felt rehearsed. Almost too perfect. Like a masterclass rather than a family kitchen. Critics began pointing out that many of the techniques shown weren't typical of everyday home cooking. These were refined, specialized methods often taught in professional culinary spaces, not passed casually from grandmother to grandson. The spices were measured with precision, not instinct. The plating was intentional, not rustic. This wasn't how families usually cooked off-camera. And then came the deeper question. If these recipes truly belonged to the family, why did their origin stories keep changing? In one video, a dish was tied to village traditions. In another, it was described as a royal court recipe. In a third, it was framed as something Sumit's mother learned after marriage. The narratives didn't align. They evolved to fit the moment. That's branding, not heritage. Meanwhile, the widow's story gained quiet support from unexpected places. Anonymous chefs, former students, people claiming they had seen the late husband's notebooks long before Spice of Sing ever existed. They described identical spice ratios, matching techniques, even the same storytelling phrases now being used on camera. Coincidence? Maybe. But too many coincidences start looking like patterns. Fans began asking the uncomfortable question: if this couple was willing to exaggerate, or even fabricate, a culinary legacy, what else had been staged? Was the mother-in-law's transformation genuine, or rebranded for profit? Was Jenny's role truly that of a curious learner, or a carefully positioned bridge to Western audiences? The entire redemption arc began to feel engineered. A narrative shift designed to keep them relevant after their relationship drama had run its course. Reality TV thrives on reinvention. But reinvention becomes deception when it borrows someone else's truth. The emotional fallout among fans was intense. Many felt foolish for believing, for paying, for defending them online. People didn't just lose faith in a couple. They lost faith in the idea that something pure could survive reality television. The love story that once symbolized hope now symbolized manipulation. And networks don't ignore this kind of backlash. Insiders reportedly claimed conversations were happening behind closed doors. Legal departments reviewing contracts. Risk assessments being made. Because if even a fraction of these allegations were proven, the consequences wouldn't be limited to public embarrassment. This could mean lawsuits, financial penalties, and permanent damage to the franchise's credibility. Reality TV can survive cheating scandals. It can survive family feuds. But intellectual theft tied to cultural exploitation? That's a different beast. And here's the most dangerous part. If the widow decides to go public, with documents, witnesses, and legal backing, the narrative shifts completely. This stops being gossip. It becomes a case. And once lawyers get involved, every video, every class, every dollar earned from those recipes becomes evidence. Fans are now waiting. Not for another cooking tutorial. Not for another smiling reel. They're waiting for answers. Real ones. Because the question isn't whether mistakes were made. The question is whether this entire second chapter of Jenny and Sumit's fame was built on someone else's life work. And if that's true, then the love story didn't just end. It was weaponized. And as the silence continues, one thing becomes clearer by the day. This isn't going away. The longer they avoid addressing it, the louder the story becomes. Because secrets don't stay buried when money, culture, and television collide. They surface. And when they do, they rarely leave anything standing. As the pressure mounted, a strange shift occurred in how Jenny and Sumit presented themselves online. The warmth that once defined their videos began to fade. Smiles looked practiced. Conversations felt scripted. The casual intimacy that fans once adored was replaced with carefully curated calm. Every post felt approved by someone else.